Okay, so I started by getting 3 sets of these Craftsman 4811 feeler gauges, and to fit them in the rocker guide I take them and I had cut them down. Okay, so here's a GTI-R rocker guide. The reason for cutting down the feeler gauges, I use the Dremel with a carbide bit, cuts through it pretty quickly, is so that they can fit in the rocker guide while they're in the motor, because you need to measure both the shim and the rocker guide to make sure there's no angle on the rocker arm itself. Okay, so what I used to cut these feeler gauges is just a standard Dremel with a tungsten carbide bit. Cut through it pretty quickly. Okay, so what you do to cut these is just get a small pair of vise grips, crimp down on the edge of the feeler gauge to give it support so it doesn't vibrate when you're cutting. Also too, you're going to want to bend these feeler gauges. I tried to bend it and broke one of them, so you're going to have to kind of heat the back of it with a torch while you're bending it, and then it starts to fold pretty easy. What I used is just a little Titan torch keychain deal. It works pretty good. Small little torch, heats it up pretty quick and bends pretty quick, so that's how I did it. So what you're going to do is you're going to start with your 229 and work your way up until you can no longer fit it in there, fit the tallest one in there. From there you're going to determine how loose it is by taking that maximum and subtracting it by the 0.21 minimum clearance, and that'll tell you how much gap there is in the motor, and I'll demonstrate this in a minute. Okay, so I started by pulling the cams out of the engine and taking out the rocker arms as well, noting which ones go on which cylinder. Also, zip tying the sprockets to the chain as well just makes it easier when you put it back together. Also too, another thing I did is rotate the engine slightly off TDC, so as much as I could with those being zip tied on there. That way when I rotate the cam or need to compress the springs, I won't have any interference. Okay, the next thing you're going to want to do is install the rocker and the cam caps just to the outside of the cylinder you're working on. I left the other ones off just so you can quickly take it off and on for measuring. You're going to rotate the cam, the lobe, away from the rocker so it's at its base circle. This is going to be your approximate angle on it. Okay, I'm starting with the .254, and we're going to measure the shim side. Okay, that's kind of loose. We're going to do the rocker guide as well. Okay, the 2.5 is kind of loose, so we're going to move up to the next one. Okay, we're moving to the .27. Stick it in the between the shim and the rocker. Okay, that one's getting a little bit tighter. You're also going to do the same thing over on the rocker guide side. And okay, so that fits in there. And we're going to move up to the next one. Okay, so now I got a .305. We'll check this one. Okay, that one's getting pretty snug in there. Okay, it's pretty snug in there as well. So we'll go with we'll say this one's at 305. For the heck of it, I'm going to check the 330. So yeah, 330 won't even fit in there. It's 0.33 millimeters. Yeah, it's not really fitting in there either, kind of forcing it. So this one is going to be 0.305. Okay, so now I'm just doing 0.305 minus 0.21, and we come up with 0.095. Okay, so the closest thing I have to a 0.095 is a 0.76. So now what you're going to do is you're going to get an arch punch or a hollow punch. Looks like this, and it's just hollow. You see where I did another one for one of the other shims. You just set it on there. Okay, so you take your arch punch and just set it on the top, get a hammer, and hammer down. And what it's going to do is it's going to punch out a perfect size hole. And what you're going to be left with is something that looks like this here. This arch punch is a 7/32 or a 5.5 millimeter. And it fits right under the cap of the shim perfectly. So that's how I'm spacing out my gaps on this GTI-R motor. Shims are getting really hard to get a hold of, and I've done this on one of my other GTI-R motors that was making a little bit over 500 horsepower, and ran it for about 2.5 years. Never had any problems, so it does work. Okay, you can see I place it underneath there. It's in there a little bit sideways. You can press it flat, or when you go and put the shim back on there, just kind of twirl it around a little bit and press down. It'll lay flat in there. So you're going to do that to both sides. I already did the other side, so just take it and put the rocker back on, install the cam with just the two outer caps here, and then you're going to remeasure with your 0.229, and as long as that 229 fits in there okay, and you shouldn't be able to fit the 2.0 in there, but if you can fit the 0.20 and it's really tight, you're okay. Okay, the next thing I did is install a vice grip on the cam. What I'm going to do is rotate it a few times, compressing it. This will flatten out the feeler gauge that you punched out. Make sure it's really pressed in there good, lays real flat. That way you get a more accurate measurement. So now that we did that, rotate it back to the base circle, and then this is where you'll stick your 0.229 or anything from a 0.21 to a 0.24 in there for your clearance. And as long as it's to spec, you're good to go.